Okay, so I'm Lise McLaughlin, and I want to welcome you to this launch of LandTrust with Katherine Hagopian Berry and her special guest, Samaa Abdurraqib. And so what we're going to do is ask people to just stay muted during the reading. But if you can turn your camera on, if you feel comfortable doing that, that's really nice, so that the poets will be able to see how much their reading means to you and you can smile at them. I'm going to be monitoring the wait room and letting people in, but I'd like to start by welcoming everybody who's here. Nature Culture is proud to be the publisher of 4 new anthologies this year, but especially proud of Kate Hagopian Berry's new book, LandTrust, which is our very first single author book. Yay, yay for Kate. So for this Zoom, I already said that, sorry. And I'm just going to introduce the readers. Katherine Hagopian Berry received her PhD in English literature from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro in 2012. She has appeared in the Cafe Review, Swim, Feral, Balancing Act 2, and Writing the Land anthologies, among other places. This is the one she's in this year, which is Maine. She is a poetry reader for the Maine Review. Her first collection, Mast Year, was published by Literal Books in 2020. And in 2021, she read about the Writing the Land project and was immediately enthralled, which I am very gratified for. Her first experience writing for New Hampshire Audubon at Dall Wildlife Sanctuary was transformative, and Katherine found herself applying this poetic practice to all sorts of land poetry in all sorts of places. And these poems became the bones of LandTrust, a collection that begins in listening and hopes to express the way in which place gives life to voice. She lives with her husband, Chris, and her 2 children, Sophia and Adam, in Bridgeton, Maine, land first cherished by the Wabanaki, Abenaki, and Pequawket peoples. You can order this book, LandTrust, through Nature Culture website, which is shamelessly featured on my screen. And our invited guest is Dr. Samaa Abdurraqib. After spending most of her life in the Midwest, Samaa has spent the last decade loving and living on unceded Wabanaki, Abenaki land. She currently resides in Brunswick, Maine. After working in Maine's anti-domestic violence movement for 5 years, Samaa recently joined the staff of the Maine Humanities Council as their executive director. Since 2017, she is focused on writing poetry, which represents a return to the form after a 20-year hiatus. Each Day is Like an Anchor is her first published collection of poetry from 2020, and Kate's holding that up now. Some of her other writing can be found in Bigger Than Bravery, Black Resistance and Reclamation in a Time of Pandemic, which is forthcoming, Bad Girls and Transgressive Women in Popular Television, Fiction, and Film, Enough, Poems of Resistance and Protest, and Cider Press Review. Samaa spends much of her free time recreating in the outdoors, enjoying the waterways, mountains, birds, and woods of this region. So now I'd like to hand it over to Kate and Samaa.
Thank you so much for coming. I thought it made sense to begin with the LandTrust poems and to sort of let you in on the window of the Writing the Land project and how these poems kind of first came into being. So the way the Writing the Land project works is we were matched with a land trust, at which point our project as poets was to go out, hike, walk, and sometimes swim, paddle, engage with the land trust in a practice of listening. And then hopefully from that, find poems. And I was like, well, how is this going to operate? And the answer is it operated magically. It operated in a really profound way. And I found myself writing over and over and over again, sort of using this practice as my benchmark, thinking about where I was grounded in land and listening. And I quickly realized that I had a bunch of poems that did this, which became Land Trust. And I want to share with you just a few to get us going before I turn things over to Samaa. First, the title poem of the collection, and then a series of poems I wrote for my most recent land, which is the Baldpate Preserve on Loon Echo Land Trust here in Bridgeton. So get ready. Here is Land Trust. This is the magic. You walk the land. Take nothing, not even your eyes. You must close them until there is no looking, only darkness, like an open hand. This is the magic. Place one foot in front of another, like a trail blazed on your bones. Embrace wandering. Some iron in the blood leads you safe home. This is the magic. The treasured knife, the mica stone, above you sky unrolls a merry shawl of blue to hold them. This is the magic. Every light ray pressed to your heart like a lover, every new bud leaf, like you, it will fall. Like you, it will come back changed. So when I first started trying to explore Baldpate Preserve, I was desperate to get on the mountain, and it was mud season, which seemed a broader metaphor than just trying to get out to your land to give it a hike. Mud season. We are waiting on the mountain. Every day I test the path down to our rushing stream and back, see if I can risk the hike not falling. Spring muck takes you down if you let it. Dangerous as deep ice, call you won't answer, letter that stays on your desktop accusing, words you can't separate from all the tears this winter cried. Outside my window, mud flows Succep River in the shape of water, swirled like an end paper. These delays are holy, I know this, but my heart is the sneaker I won't put in the washer, scar of so much failure, dirtying the soul. So when I finally got up on Baldpate, I was immediately informed that it was home to one of my favorite things on earth, a pyrophytic species, which is a plant that can only reproduce. So this is a pine tree, the pitch pine, and the seed cones drop, but they will only burst open and release seeds in fire. So you actually have to have this destructive event in order to promote new growth from the plant. In other news, the Loon Echo Land Trust has noted that Baldpate Preserve is known for being an extremely accessible mountain and is often climbed by those in recovery or finding their recovery from various sorts of health issues. And those two things came together in this poem. Pitch pine. Pitch pine pyrophyte on Baldpate Mountain. We say prune like it's easy to let anything still living go. All of us hoarders, seed cone days like child photos stacked, scaled and bracked, impervious until heat spreads us open like a palm. Parkinson's, leukemia, failing kidney, failing liver, cancer cells like fascicles, bright berry tumorous, the place where once something better grew. Twisted things can heal us if we let them. Resin tears sealing open sores, swollen muscles, soothing even you. Phone in your pocket, climb the mountain, bandaged in silence. Find a view without any clear end, thin hand on tan leg, the one gift I can give you, a day with nothing in it, empty like a granite ledge, negative margin, blank scan. Okay, yay. As I drop out my earbud. So I have time to squeeze 2 more in here. My favorite memory of walking this mountain, which I did a couple of times, is a hike I took with my father. And a lot of the times the poems you write come sort of from your own life and sort of from someplace else, but really most of this poem actually did come from life. My father was determined to climb Baldpate Preserve on the absolute hardest trail, and in fact, completely nailed it, like was the first one up the mountain on the hardest trail, proving all of our worrying was a little foolish, which is in some ways the subject of this poem, called Trailblazer. Oh, and just so you know, for those of you who love poetic form, the poem is a sestina, so the repeating words that you're hearing actually form a pattern in the poem. Trailblazer. There are many ways up the mountain. Novice hikers should consider the orange loop, a gentle meander, hawks, birches, even wood ducks. But husband and daughter, eager sneakers, shining blazes, ready muscles stacked like cairns, say they'll take the harder trail. My father still deciding. Tight patent leather shoes, my father's eyes meet mine, part ways. Mountains don't judge. Dollars stacked in your wallet like cairns or empty-handed happiness, the wild loop of zero, nothing left to lose. A voice blazes past us. He's for Pate Trail. Elder ducks honk frenzied warnings, smiling. My mother ducks her head around a chill of fear. Your father can't even see the blazes, hazards. Old men shouldn't climb mountains. Too late to call him back. Our path loops over a gentle rise. At the next cairn, we add a stone, like you do for a grave. Cairns, when used for direction, are called ducks. Across the balding headland, they loop like the proud nose of a stubborn father. What the mountain is already showing you. At the end, blazes are unnecessary. Only maples blazoning endings like fruit on the altar of the cairn, like waves of color on the mountain, iridescent cries of mallard ducks, and my father, out of sight on the hardest loop of the most challenging hike. Just the narrow loop of our voices to remind him, follow blue blazes, keep pace, don't rush. But my father summits before all the others. We find him monument, a cairn. Calmly, he points the beak of the duck true north, writes in his journal, Baldpate Mountain. You climbed a mountain, says the cairn. Autumn blazes as it cools, weep the ducks. Descending together, I loop arms with my father. And if you live in Maine, you know that we are all waiting for the thaw. Thaw. Stop running. The trail waits like an open door, snow-filled hollow, sugar maple, sap like a river, ribbons of ice. Pause on it, trusting it forgives everything that kept you from this place, that made you speak and not listen, move and not stand still. Stop running. Stack heartbeat on heartbeat like a cairn fixed direction, hand raised like a mountain, maybe a spell, maybe a prayer. Falcon shadowing eager ground, maybe a harrier, maybe a merlin. So why not choose every day to err on the side of magic? Believe bird and rock and endless sky will speak miracles if you let them. Unfurl as you exhale, take your heart with them as they bound. All stars and east wind, companionate moving, universe speaking, we are all already everything. the salmon, the spring deer, the merlin falcon gyring. Believe it, breath of their passing already soft, already reborn, already at our destination, already safe back home. Samaa, I can't wait for you to introduce your land and your poem.
Thank you so much, Kate. It was really wonderful to hear those read out loud. I read all of them, but just I'd never, hearing them in your voice was just really, really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So I am going to read some nature poems. I'm going to start with two poems that I wrote for the land that I was assigned, which is the Presumpscot River Trail, which is in Portland. The Presumpscot River is a beautiful, beautiful river. Lots of, the word Presumpscot means many falls, and that's what you see when you're at the river. And I visited the trail several times in every season just to get a sense of what the land does and how it changes over time. So if you're ever in Portland, you should check it. You should check it out. So the first poem I'm going to read, and it's from that Maine book that Lise just shared. The first poem that I'm going to read is a poem called A Long Walk for a River. And it was inspired by reading about Wabanaki Chief Pollen, who many years ago walked twice to Boston. This is when Massachusetts still was kind of the seat of government for Maine was still in Massachusetts. So he walked to Boston to advocate for fish ladders so that the fish could come up through the Presumpscot, and his people who lived along the banks of the river there and used the banks of the river to hunt for food could feed themselves and their families. So this is called A Long Walk for a River. Presumpscot, cut as in sliced, as in gash. Presumpscot, cot as in bed, as in laying. River of belonging, home, as in life, as in bounty. River of many falls, as in love, as in dropping to knees. The second poem I'm going to read is called Tributaries, and it's really wonderful to walk the Presumpscot River trails in the wintertime. And I took one walk there with my friend Jen, who's here today. Hi, Jen. Me and Jen and her impossibly tiny dog. And this is a poem that was inspired by that walk. So it's called Tributaries. At the start, it is all motion. When it is quiet in these woods, it is never really quiet in these woods. A person can learn what a babble is here. It's a constant. It's an all season under ice, over stones, through crevices, can't stop, won't stop, Presumpscot. There's a certainty in that. Putting one foot in front of the other, knowing that at any point, from beginning bench to end bench, you can come to a halt, close your eyes, push your heels in, and hear a trickle become a rush, become a beckoning that pulls you ever forward. Tributary may be too strong of a word, but we all pay homage at some point along the path. The streams, our footfalls, the boulders the river has molded, the eagle we saw circling above that day, my friend and I, when we tumbled to stillness at the T in the path. I am now, so I like to read off of my computer, so you're going to just see my eyes like looking for the minimized document. So I'm going to move away from the Presumpscot River Trail Let's say goodbye to that beautiful trail. And I'm going to read a couple of other nature poems. This one I think will be the last one that's about like the landscape of this particular region. This poem is called Late Autumn, Observing the Coastline of Beals Island. And Beals Island is in the down east part of Maine. It's really beautiful. So this is, it's by the Great Wasp, if anyone knows that area. So late autumn, observing the coastline of Beals Island. Where the rocky coastline meets the forest, there are places where the roots of trees cling to boulders, twisting and joining, threading themselves through one another. I want to call this a congregation, a place of testifying to strength and the near impossibility of roots siphoning water from stones, spirit work. No matter how tall or killed over by the elements, roots join knuckle to knuckle, telling stories of erosion and of days past, of the shoreline that used to be crumbled, of the legs of relatives who used to stride and skirt the edges, vanished now. Tree limbs and arms thrust high, high, bare, fingers bare, tense and taut, fanning out in all directions like a scene of liberation. I want to call this a ululation, a moment of lifting up in praise and shaking off when the winds barrel through and say, it is time, sacrificial, to give up all adornment and color and to be seen, vulnerable in praise, fully open in adoration of themselves, of each other. I'm going to read two more poems. One is about fireflies, which is I was, as Lisa said, I was born on the East Coast, raised in the Midwest, and growing up in the Midwest, I don't know if there are other Midwestern folks here, but fireflies were like a thing. You would just see hordes of them in fields or what have you, and they would just kind of they syncopate and they just kind of strobe. And when I moved to New England, I just missed fireflies. There just weren't as many here, and that may be for a number of reasons, but recently I've seen them again. They were here really early, but they're an interesting thing is that they're, I've been seeing them in my yard this year, but their light pattern is different than what I remember in the Midwest. It's very, I don't know anything about fireflies other than I love them. But so I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, so this poem is called Morse Code, and Morse codes, and it is about fireflies. I miss fireflies, not even the grand orchestral synchronicity of them in that dark Midwestern field off that rural road I'd never let my brown skin travel down alone. No, I miss the singular lazy phenomenon of them when they come to rest in the tiny crater cup of your two hands, or when they alight on the stretched out webbing between a thumb and a forefinger. I sit outside in the cooled off night air, and when I close my eyes, I see the slow settling of elytra that shelters the wings and underneath their gradual throb of light. I used to wonder about Morse codes. Imagine me, small and brown, gazing up at the night sky. I know all of the constellations that could be seen from our apartment complex parking lot. I am retelling stories of the stars to my father with twinkling lights suspended in front of my face and dancing around my small, excited hands. I am feeling deeply, neurons whispering energetically, and I am wondering if the small lights around me are speaking in code, telling their own stories to the stars above me. Okay, the last poem I'm going to read is in this chapbook, which I published in 2020, which I still get confused about whether or not 2020 was last year. It's just the way it is. Anyway, so I was invited to participate in an artist cycle with through this this artist group called A Clearing, A Possible Practice. And they work with a lot of visual artists, not as many writers. And we were supposed to produce something at the end of our cycle. And I was like, well, I guess I have to write a chapbook or something. I don't know. So this is my first chapbook. And I will drop the link to A Clearing. They are out of the chapbook right now, but I'm going to restock them very soon. And that is where you can order it from. So I'll drop the link as we as we go on. But this poem I'm going to read is called "The Year of the Squirrel," and I'm excited to read it because I think Kate has a very similar poem that she might about this moment. And I think it was 2018. Yes, 2018, where there was like this abundance of acorns, which led to an abundance of squirrels, kind of haphazardly in the roads, and it was just kind of carnage, as you can imagine. And I found that to be so fascinating. And then I heard the story about the abundance of squirrels. So this is called Year of the Squirrel. It's been a good year for the squirrels. Summer 2018. Even the conservation biologists are surprised. A line of brake lights in trails on the roadway. So much depends on the abundance of acorns. Frantic hands that grasp, stockpiling for the winter. It was a good summer for the squirrels. According to the Center for Wildlife, the numbers are extraordinary. Boom and doom, the headline reads. The ones who scrape hot tar, gray bodies stiff, have no opinion. Skid marks along country roads, streets pockmarked with carcasses, all gray and pink and red, a flash of white, all without feeling. Such a good year for the squirrels. The foxes in the shadow in the bush, they bare their teeth and wait their turn. Thank you. Kate, I hope that was a good set. I hope you do read Master.
Wow. You know, I wasn't gonna. I was gonna go in a little bit different direction. So those of you that know, my first book was Math Year, and like literally that event, like this is one of just the coolest poetry synergies. That event is what informed the title poem in that collection. And as I was putting together LandTrust, I found myself writing a squirrel poem. And it's sort of like only in this moment when I returned to this poem of Samaa's and, you know, thought about Math Year that I realized that, of course, this squirrel poem is intricately linked to like the energy of my first book and now appears in this second book. And the story behind the squirrel poem is fantastic because the way that this works out is my sister-in-law is known for associating you with an animal, and it's and you know, she has a master's degree in like family therapy, so like when I tell you this is like always an insightful revelation, and like anytime she sort of matches someone, you know, I meditate on like what are the different levels and sort of transformative insights that I can gain from this. And you know, she had never really matched me, and then one day she's kind of like, I'm sort of getting squirrel. And I'm like, squirrel? Have you looked at it? I am like so unsquirrel-like, like whale, moose, bear, squirrel. And then, you know, I actually did the work, right? And I did the meditation and I'm like, well, okay, maybe, yeah, maybe. So I guess squirrels are big. So here they are. Here's the LandTrust take on a squirrel poem, which is titled, You Told Me the Red Winter Squirrel. You told me the red winter squirrel could be my animal. and I ignored you. Imagining whales soft with oceans, imagining moose antler heavy, lilied breath, my mountain pond. Surely my body must announce itself, stop and take notice, pull over photograph, the largest thing in the room. But you may have been right. Gut flat for shelter, all the world hoard, thousands of small piles piled up for later. By the Band-Aids, I tell you, we are running low. All the rainbow masks, pants one size too big, the next gift, and then the next. Winter is my preoccupation, anything that can kill you when you aren't really looking. They say death by freezing is comfortable. Snow your blanket, ice a mobile, refracted light fractures into prismacolor. They say even trees will lullaby that close to the end. All except the squirrel. Shadow-tailed, bow of its body bridge between worlds. It will spit its life upon you, claw until it clenches, your heart pulled back to savor this hunger and survive.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. I just love that part about the stockpiling, the piles of things. It just created such an image. I don't know. Is being a squirrel a good thing? I don't know. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad? I don't know. Squirrels are tenacious.
I found myself making my peace, right?
Squirrels are tenacious and, you know, just very determined. I am inspired to read this poem called Trash Day, Day 9. And it is only because it mentions a rat. It mentions rats, but I wrote it in the beginning part of the pandemic, so early 2020, and just around the time, at that time I was living in Portland, Maine, and we had just been like, what do you call it? Like quarantine for, I think it was this is the 9th day. And it was trash day. So trash day, day 9. I walk outside to greet the wet and gray of this newly April morning. It is Thursday morning. It is trash day in my neighborhood. I've got 2 bags of my own. I imagine my neighbors emerging from day 8 of isolation, rapid blinking in the lessening evening light of the day before. Trash bags in hand, some with gloves, some without, both regretting their choices. This morning, our sidewalks look like the morning after Christmas. Every curb piled high with bags of purple and white, bulging at the seams, some split. White bags overtaking purple, the rules have relaxed and we've settled on cheapness. At the end of my driveway, 5 trash bags lay in a tumble there, waiting for me to add my 2. Contents spilling out of the cheap white distended bags. Rats have torn a hole in one. Paper-plated remnants of the week before peek out. 7 bags total for us in this building of 4 apartments. On any other week, there'd be 4. We are no different from our neighbors. 1 week inside and our trash has multiplied and taken on a different heft. For a moment, I wonder if this is the trash from some other neighborhood added here on top of ours, clandestinely in the middle of the night. Returning inside from my window, I watch the trashmen come. They linger at each curb minutes longer now than any other week. The sheer volume of the bags extending their work time. On this week, 2 men lift our burgeoned trash, 1 bag at a time this week with both hands. I know that this is all ours. This is what we have been inside creating. No inexplicable night mission to blame. This is what we do when we are forced to brick ourselves in. We multiply, we generate, we produce fetid waste. We sag into our excesses. We cheaply dispose. we rapid blink in the fading light.
You know, I'm always like, even when I hear a poem that I've read before and I know of yours, Samaa, like different lines, like this time it was settled on cheapness, like just, and the image of those bags, right? I love how different things like come to prominence in a poem at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Which made me want to read this poem from LandTrust, right? It's like, I'm always just fascinated by like how one poem can open a door for another. And the poem that this opened for me was sort of another meditation on like what we keep and what we don't keep, and what we value and what we don't value. This poem rose out of the fact that the collective noun for goldfish is a troubling, which is not what one might expect, until I went to go buy a goldfish with my son. And then it seemed like really terribly apt. And that was the origin of this poem entitled A Troubling of Goldfish. It's in 5 sections, and I'll read the number as I go. A Troubling of Goldfish. 1. You fall in love with feeder fish. Ghetto of a temporary tank, absent everything except a drabbing of gray stone. The fish are what moves. So much color, cloudy water seethes with life. Your favorite, the albino, long and white like a surrender, body outlier, one to watch out for. You say you love him best. 2. Patient, we try, say all the right things. Feeder fish don't make good pets. They need bigger tanks, more food. There is no 14-day guarantee. But I see your heart longing for the one we leave behind. Misshapen head, tender body vulnerable, the eyes of a thing that knows its place in line. 3. All the beds are full. It is the same for everyone everywhere. No doctor's diagnosis room at the inn, small safe corner to put your terror down. On tiny hands flashed like scales, marks children carve upon themselves. If you could, you would cross your heart, but children are always keepers, bright crowns pulled back carefully so you can see their eyes. 4. If you hadn't told me it would ruin our pond, I would have bought all the feeder fish in the tank, mottled orange, melt snow white, dirty brown, and let them go. Imagine how we would have dived, bodies growing long and fat and brown from kelp in the water, yellow lilies we canoe out to every year. Instead, I nurture our tank, pillow soft ferns, warming light, treasure chest. One fish at least will never know want. Feed joyfully along safe densities of ground. 5. I try not to think about the ones I leave behind. Writhe of hungry bodies, each one a 40-gallon tank away from freedom. But there is never enough plastic flowers, omnivore food, water wheel bubblers, love to go around.
Okay, I love that goldfish poem so much because it takes the thing that seems so like mundane and makes it so intensely moving and deep. I love the part where it seems like you're becoming like mermaid fish, like you're diving in and I love it. And wait, what's the name for the grouping of goldfish? I forgot already.
A troubling, right? Like that's not what you'd expect, but seriously, like if you've ever seen these like disposable feeder fish in the pet store, like that is what it is. It is a troubling. It is troubling.
I love that goldfish poem. I'm so glad you read it. Thank you. So I love birds. Folks who know me know that I love birds like a lot. And so this is working really well, Kate, because I actually have 2 poems that involve groupings, names of groupings of birds. And I was like trying to, I was like, this is trying to decide which one I would read. And I think I'm going to read the more, I'm going to read this one called Bird Symbols, which is, I don't always like reading very personal poems in readings, and this feels very personal, but I really like the names. It has a lot of groupings of birds. But anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Okay, it's called Bird Symbols. You fell asleep on my naked chest the day your mother died. I'd walk through your front door and into the clenched jaw of your grief that afternoon, after you called me on my drive and tried to turn me away. You told me that it was bad there in your house, your voice a parliament of owls. I have always been a compass for other people's navigation through grief. I told you to make a list. I told you to call your people. Your daughter wailed into the other end of the phone when you told her. I'd only seen her face in pictures, but I imagined tears streaming, throat thrown back, world-ending grief of a 13-year-old, the release of a cloud of blackbirds. You held my hand through every number you dialed, every careful steadying of your voice, every mentioning of peanut, every blustery laugh that came too loud. I crossed names off the list, listened for the mention of my name. You called me your anchor, your interesting thing, your one piece of joy. What an evening we had, time passing on your low couch as you put phone to ear and food to mouth, as I put food to mouth and pen to paper. What a night we had, more than your small, tightly held body could handle. You fell asleep with your head on my naked chest that night. When that car caught fire 3 lots down on your rural road at 2 a.m., I had to uncocoon myself from you. I had to peel your face off my left breast. I called your name firmly, and you sprinted out of bed, down the stairs, and out the door like you were built for saving lives. The fast flit of a charm of hummingbirds. I threw a shirt over my head and watched you move about, silhouetted in the dancing flames those yards away. And when the flames grew higher and I could no longer see your shadow, I tilted my hips forward, pressed my palms flat against the cold window, pushed my forehead onto the glass, as if I had the power to make you reappear. I lost you for those moments, but you came back to me eventually, smelling of smoke and disbelief and radiant amusement. And I was relieved. I am always misinterpreting signs, always misreading symbology. A short time later, when the joy of us became too much for you, and you settled into the heavy unhappiness you call your own, you transformed into stone for months and months on end, hands outstretched, frozen with palms cupped for offerings. I tithed, I tithed, I tithed, a tithing of magpies. I lifted the whole weight of you and carried you to your bed. I cradled you like I did on that night of grief and fire, but you were stiff and unyielding, cold stone back against the warmth of my breast, frozen hands outstretched in the other direction. I feel like I brought things way down. So Kate, you have to bring it back up. You have to bring it back up, Kate.
That was so beautiful, though. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll bring the next one.
No, don't. Oh my gosh, it was gorgeous. Thank you for trusting us with that. Wow. You know, there are poems about grieving in LandTrust too. You know, one of the terrible things about life is you lose people out of it. And I was so drawn to that image of, you know, in grief, you're drawn to save other things and rushing out to like save whoever was in danger on the road, the stranger on the road. And, you know, one of my grief poems in this collection is about that same impulse, right? Like, you know, in grief, we have this need to sort of rush out and save something. And in my case, it was a shark. I lost a family member who I was really, really close to last summer. And right before their Shiva, which as everything these days was on Zoom, we went to the beach like the day before, and a fisherman had caught a baby shark, and I was just not okay with that. For a lot of reasons. Part of it is I probably would never be okay with it, but especially in a time of grief, right? This like beautiful, wild, fierce, helpless thing being captured was completely not okay. So before your Shiva, a shark. Bald fisherman, bright hook, we flock like bait fish, see the sharp fin, see the dangled tooth, death like a kept promise on the end of an invisible line. It's just a baby, I say, an accident. The fisherman, hands flopping, lowers the shark back to breaking water. I watch its tail drag across the sand, a pictograph, a rune. It can't breathe, I say. Red pulse of the gill, my own exhale, a world without you, raw in heart. Bit by bit, we cut it free. My voice, pliers and belt knives, everything but the hook, impossibly sharp, a whole jaw lost to pain. Don't worry, the fisherman says. It'll work its way out in time. Healing overtakes us. The ocean is half our blood. I gentle the shark as we finally cut it free. Each brutal wave, each shudder breath drags it back to shore. I need it to live for you. Swim the unfathomable dark with all the persistence life can muster. I need it to find its mother, some path beyond pain. The shark and I in silhouette, one beach, one waning sandbar, my hand reaching out swings the shark wide like a silver rainbow over the water. No space between its wild motion and my own. Only what we have in common. Fight, this breath, one sudden dive, and both are gone.
Okay, that poem gave me many chills. Learning the impetus behind the poem is like, it just does so much for me, of course, right? Of course, but it made me pay attention to it in a very different way. That's a really powerful poem. Thank you. Okay. And did you really just throw it back into the, like, that end, the image of you with creating the arc with your, that's beautiful. I love that poem. Thank you. So
We need something happy. Oh no.
Well, I don't think this is kind of I don't know, this is kind of an interesting poem. But it is about disposing of a dead seal. I don't know. I don't think it's a sad poem. It's just kind of like it's like a factual, it's just that. So I was on Hurricane Island sitting on the rocks, and the folks who are at the Hurricane Island Institute or whatever it's called, well, somebody who was there with me, like some of the, we were having an event there. Someone saw a dead seal on the rocks, and they went and told the people, and they went and got a boat to dispose of the dead seal. And this is how it happened, I guess. And this poem, I say that this poem, it's called Dirty Work, and I say that it's for Silas. Silas is like the young man who disposed of the seal, and he has a line at the end that he says, so Dirty Work, or how to dispose of a dead seal. Here's what I learned. To dispose of a seal, you first prod it with a 2x4 plank. You have to make sure it's not just resting. Use the plank to flip the seal into a large plastic container. Pause, reflect. This is a thing that once lived. but also it is dead and reeks of putridness. Drag the container to the edge where the rocks meet the ocean. Look out over the ocean into the distance. Pause, reflect. This was a living thing that lived among other living things. But also, disposal is crude and this process is profane. As you wait where the rocks meet the ocean, a man with a small boat will emerge through the fog. He will steer towards you where you stand, rocks at ocean. You will board his boat holding the seal container in both hands. He will steer you through the fog to a place that will be the final resting place. The boat will stop. Pause, reflect. This ending is likely not noble. It cannot possibly respect the life of this beast. But also, there are age-old litanies and rituals about returning a thing from whence it came. You will tip the container at an angle with both hands. The contents will tumble into the ocean. It will sink fast. Loud splash, heavy weight. You will not pause. You will not reflect. The deed is complete now. The man will steer his small boat back to the place where the ocean meets the rocks. You will disembark feeling changed by this event. Later, when you are commended for your fortitude in the process, your bravery with this dirty work, you will respond with laughter. It was nothing. I just used a 2x4. Didn't even have to wash my hands. Not happy, but also not
Yeah, right. Isn't it weird how
the place.
closer you are, like in that natural world, right? Like you have to deal with that, right? With the dirty work, with things dying. And I love in that poem how the language is so sparse and so matter of fact, and yet it becomes so mythical, right? Like everything has such like a deep and profound layer to it. That image of the boat into the fog, like it's tremendous.
So I should
I have
I should probably remind you guys that we're getting toward the end. So make sure you get in the poems you want to before 2 o'clock.
Okay, so we should do a last one, huh? All right. Yeah, okay. I can do a last one. Are you ready? This is interesting because the last poem in the collection is in some ways about that, right? Like the things which pass and the things which don't, and the things which endure. And I think it works best without really saying anything else about it. A little prayer for what doesn't leave us. Earth and spirit, draw the world card, eternal. Light the sweet sage thistle, blood candle, purify every shadow, blue, violet, purple, drive the circle. You still know the way. In darkness, in blindness, find the outline of your young dreams. Reliquary, sanctuary, this pilgrimage prostrate at the feet of your past, splinter tooth, fingernail, seeking some grasp of bone on time-bleached bone, former address, blank, the raw field where once our houses stood. Come seeking resolution, compassion, open the door sign, pour the red wine, string the bead, a new moon mala, transit summer stars, our palms oracles, signs and wonders on street corners, magnolia leaves, evergreen. From the rust iron, you have made a garden. From chainmail, a jewel. Hungry now, our lost feast comes, books still waiting exactly where we put them, on the windowsill, by the sunflowers, spiral galaxies forming. Inhale the breath we take, what refuses eclipse, what will never change.
Ugh. I'm so glad you read that one. Oh, I love that one so much. I'm so glad you read that, Kate. Thank you. I
And
think
Kate, show how that poem is laid out in the book.
Oh, it's hard to see. Oh, there it is. It's so beautiful.
She did a beautiful job with the layout. Kate laid out the book herself, which is amazing and beautiful because she used Martin Bridges' original painting 7 times, also on the inside.
I hope you all read the collection. That poem is a beautiful way to end that collection. I hope you all get LandTrust, read LandTrust, cuddle up with LandTrust. As promised, there. Oh, we both like made a. So there's where you can, if you are interested in my chapbook, there's where you can purchase it. It is out of stock right now, but I'm getting new ones printed. Also, I am accepting poems for a collection with nature culture. So, Kate just published her book, and then next I'll be working on this collection. And so it's going to be an anthology, and I am looking for poems, nature poems from Black, Brown, and Indigenous writers of the Northeast region. And so if you know of folks who might be interested, please share that submission. The submission deadline is December the 1st. And you can read more at the link. I'm thinking of this region kind of broadly, but you can read more at the link. Wait, do I read one more, or is that read one more? Okay, I'm going to read I'm doing the thing where I'm like looking around. I want to read one of my favorite poems from the chapbook. And Kate, your poem made me think of this a little bit, but not exactly, but just a little bit. So this poem is called Never Ending. And so just to say a little bit about the theme of the chapbook. So for the artist cycle, each year, folks who are artists who are invited into the cycle are asked to respond to a piece of work by another artist. And so in 2020, the piece of work that we were all responding to was Franny Choi's poem, The World Ends, the World Keeps Going On. It's a poem about apocalypses. And this happened in February, or in January, I think, before we knew that the pandemic was going to be what the pandemic was. So this book has a lot of apocalypse poems in them, and I actually kind of love apocalyptic things. So this poem is called Never Ending, and it is a re-envisioning of an apocalyptic moment where there's something afterwards. We don't know what. And it starts with a quote from Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, who wrote this collection of short stories called Friday Black. So I will read the quote. Quote, before you're gone, you know that all that's ever been will still be, even if there are no tomorrows, even if the apocalypse isn't the end. All right, so this is never ending. We leave shadows and footprints when whatever trumpet sound or whatever light comes to vanish us. You can count on that. Dark shadows pressed against walls, blackened footsteps in grass. The weight of us still bends blades and displaces dirt and dust. None of us will be there to witness and to capture, though. We had our time. What did we do with what we had? The atoms we absorbed will have drifted, become new molecules, and still they'll carry the memories of all of us. If we believe the stories, the tools of our lives will continue on without us. Refrigerator doors wide open, cars careening into each other and crashing to standstill, tractors ambling, record needles scratching on repeat and repeat, the things that hold us, continuing to bow, bend, cup, and grasp for us while we succumb. By bright light or shrill noise or sudden darkness, or who knows, we won't know. The ending might be an unexpected swell. But there will be quiet again. Our imprints will remain. Whoever and whatever comes next will wonder, did they watch and wait as it approached, this ending? Did they imagine what would come next? And the whoever, whatever will move among our shadows, stepping into our footprints, and whatever will begin again.
Thank you, Samaa, for that ending poem about endings and beginnings. And Kate, congratulations on this beautiful anthology. Can you both hold up the books again so everybody can see them? This is very exciting.